Hi everyone, and welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday again. Today we're going to talk about how being in business, being in private business, is like being on the high wire. We talk to a lot of business owners about planning, and one of the things we often talk about is the difference in risk level from when you start in business to later on, and the risks and the things that you're facing at that time. So when you start out in business, I usually use the analogy of, it's like you've seen the high wire walkers at the circus, and they're going on they're doing some sort of acrobatics on a high wire. Well, when you're first in business, if this is the ground down here, when you're first in business, it's kind of like being 3 feet off the ground. If you fall, there's not really a lot at risk. You're probably not going to hurt yourself too much. So if you fail in business very early on, a lot of times there isn't a lot of risk unless you've invested a lot of money into that business. And usually if you're starting on your own, if it's not a franchise or something like that, you haven't made significant investments in the business if you're starting from scratch. However, as the business grows, it's almost like you're moving up that pole or that side of the equation there, and all of a sudden, you've got a business. You started here and the business was worth nothing. All of a sudden, you look back and you're 5 years into the business. Now you got a business that's worth maybe a couple $1 million, maybe far more than that. And it's like being 50 or 80 feet off the ground in terms of risk. Now they say that business owners are risk takers, and I suppose that's true in many respects, but in a lot of ways business owners are risk mitigators. So we know we're at risk. We know that owning a business has risks attached to it, but what you want to do is you want to try to mitigate those risks. So it's answering questions like, if you died last night, who makes the decisions today that you were making yesterday? If you couldn't show up for work for a period of a week, 2 weeks, 6 months, would the business keep going, or is it at risk of failing? And if it's at risk of failing, what stage are you at? Are you at this stage where, well, you know what, it didn't work, I incurred a health event, I had an illness, and I had to go live at my parents' house or whatever. When people are in their 20s and they're just starting out in business, sometimes that happens. And so it's a risk, and it's sad to have to stop that business, but it's from financially not a huge risk. When you get up here, you've got people who rely on you. Maybe you've got employees, you've got customers, perhaps you've got covenants with the bank, or you've got a bank loan that you're responsible for, maybe lease payments on an office or a facility of some sort. And so the risk is a lot higher. And too often, business owners are so attached to the activities of the business, so ingrained in operating the business, that they really don't have the ability for themselves to back away. That's one way that you can reduce risk, is as the business grows, you might be able to hire a general manager or hire some key people, chief financial officer, general manager, those kinds of roles, so that you can be more of an investor in the business and less in the day-to-day. Now, having said that, we know that most business owners, most owner-operator businesses are in that business because they love doing the business, they want to grow it, they have a vision for it, and that's all fine and good. You just need to recognize that there are times when you need to take stock, have a look, almost like figuratively look down, and how high am I off the ground? What are the risks that I'm facing, and how do I solve those problems? The point is, a lot of these issues, from our perspective in the planning that we do, are relatively easy to fix. So for instance, you have a small business where you've got an owner where the business really couldn't survive a long period of time where that person is not there. Do they have sufficient disability insurance to replace their own income so that they don't have to rely on a business that doesn't have its top management? Or do they have critical illness in the business so that the business can survive and maybe hire another person with the cash that critical illness policy would provide? And is there life insurance in place? So these are all insurance products, I know, but there are planning things that you can do to mitigate risk, but providing liquidity is probably the next best thing to having the person there. It's true personally in a home, and it's certainly very much true in a business as well. So think about your business. What stage are you at? Are you early in the growth stages of your business? Are you sort of in that very large middle ground between maybe 5 years and 30 years perhaps, depending on what your goals are for the business, where you're continuing to grow that business? Are you still the person? Are you the guy or the gal that has to do the work? Are you the one that's responsible for the activities of the business, the growth of the business, the vision of the business, and actually doing the work? If so, you need to figure out how to protect yourself, maybe with insurance products, but also reducing your risk by having great people around you so that if you weren't there, at least the work in process could be completed. I find that in talking with business owners, that's usually when they have a team of people and they've taken the time and effort to create a great team of people to do the work, their loss, they would say, well, if I couldn't be there, the work would really continue. But then I ask, well, what about the vision? What about the vision of the business? How would the business continue to grow? And usually at that point, they're like, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, I really drive the vision, because you own the vision. As a business owner, you own the vision and you're the one that's taking it forward. So you need to have that good team of people around you, depending on the type of business you're in. If you're in a purely consulting business and it's just you, then definitely having those insurance products in place is absolutely critical, because if you're not there, the business basically falls apart. So it depends on the type of business you have, but this simple little exercise in thinking about, how high am I off the ground? What is our business worth? Is a good one to do maybe every 3 to 5 years. If you have partners in the business, if you have business partners, it's also very key, very crucial to look at, because when you start on a business with a partner, a lot of times it's just on a handshake. It's just, we've agreed, this is what we want to do, and everybody's getting along. But you haven't put in the proper agreements. You don't have shareholder agreements, and you certainly don't have those. If you do have shareholder agreements, a lot of times they're not funded. What I mean by that is, if someone dies, where does the money come from to buy out that person's share? Does the business have that kind of money lying around? Well, when you're down here, maybe it's kind of it's not really worth a lot. But as the business grows and it is more valuable, even if you haven't figured out its actual fair market value, because a lot of times that's the case, you don't really know what you could sell it for, you have to come to some sort of agreement that if someone dies or gets ill or wants to leave, there's some sort of formula to figure out what their value is worth, what their portion is worth. And from a health event perspective or a death perspective, which are situations that are unforeseen, you can put insurance products in there to make sure that those safety nets are funded with tax-free cash. So being on the high wire is being in business, or being in business is being on the high wire, and you need to check out how high you are off the ground on a periodic basis to see how you can mitigate the risks that you face. I hope you enjoyed this version, or this episode rather, of Whiteboard Wednesday. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.